On Washington, they are still arguing about what to do with the Affordable Care Act, and that's creating a lot of anxiety in Delaware. The man who's been covering that is Matt Albright, who is the political reporter for the News Journal. It's very difficult to do this story, right, because it keeps changing.
Right. There is a bill, a Republican bill, but the bill keeps changing, and people aren't 100% sure if that's the bill that's going to pass. There are several proposals that are out there. But the thought is that the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, put a lot of Delawareans on health insurance.
And you have all of these governors across the country who will be putting out their budgets in this week or the following weeks. That it may mean nothing because they're going to have to replace some money that's being taken away from them.
Right. There's about 700, a little more than 740 million or something like that money, Delaware state money that goes to Medicaid. Delaware already has a big budget deficit that it's facing. And there's a lot of anxiety over that already. And you could just imagine that if on top of the budget deficit we're already facing, all of a sudden there's less Medicaid money, that could really be a problem for state policymakers.
Have they figured out what the best case scenario is?
Well, the best case scenario from, if you're Governor John Carney, is that Republicans don't repeal Obamacare, or that they actually make it more generous.
Now, let's explain that for a second, because it may not be that Obamacare is perfect, but at least there's some certainty. Right. You know what you're dealing with.
Exactly. The argument that folks in Delaware would make, Delaware being a blue state, is that say, look, Obamacare's not perfect. We need to fix it, but let's not throw it out.
They're throwing it out, and you tell me, you cover politics, they're throwing it out for political reasons because they said they would. Right. But the fact that they're replacing it so fast with something that's similar in so many ways, they are just fixing it.
It depends upon who you ask. Republicans would say they're fixing it, because they're saying we're lowering the cost. Obamacare costs billions and billions of dollars every year. We're lowering the cost. But Democrats would say the goal should be to insure everybody. And the Republican bill, according to the nonpartisan Government Accountability Office, would throw millions of people off of health care. So it depends upon what your definition of fixing it is. Is the definition of fixing it we're going to lower the deficit and lower the debt? Or is the goal putting more or less people on health insurance? The way legislators who have to write the budget talk about it, when they're talking frankly about it, is, look, we're already broke. We already are down $380 million as of yesterday. There's just no way that we could afford to pick it up unless we significantly raise taxes.
Since you like to talk politics, let's talk politics about this for a second, because here's the problem I see the Republicans having with this, is that no matter what they do, it might be the perfect bill, it's theirs now. Right. Whatever happens, they own, and they have to take every criticism that comes along with it. And so in many ways, President Obama and his administration, even though this was his landmark legislation, they're off the hook. Right.
And President Trump has actually said on the record, I think, that if the bill doesn't pass, they just let Obamacare implode because they think it will. Now, the question then is, what's the public good of that?
No, exactly. Right. But that gets lost all the time in these political arguments on both sides. I understand that. The thing that was highlighted to me that it might be a problem was the fact that Trump didn't want to put his name on it. Here's a guy that puts his name on everything. He wants his name on the wall. Right. And he said, no, this isn't Trump care. Right. No. I actually think I'd love to get your opinion on this. I actually think he's doing a smart thing by pulling back.
Certainly Democrats, including Delaware, Democrats, I mean, Tom Carper puts out press releases that call it Trump care. And you're seeing Donald Trump and his people sort of going, whoa. We saw what happened when the president's bill, when the former president's bill was called Obamacare. We don't want that on us. I think what's interesting is watching the Democrats say, okay, you did this to us. Turnabout's fair play. We're going to do exactly the same thing we did to you. And at the end of the day, if we just keep calling it that over and over, it might stick, just the way the Republicans did.
Let me give you an unfair question. At the end, where this is going, especially from a state level, where do you think this is going to end up? Something's going to pass, right?
You have to imagine that after spending 7 years talking about how they're going to repeal Obamacare, they're going to do something. The question is, how drastic is that something going to be? And I think the sort of default option is you do something that's relatively small, relatively unambitious, that leaves most of the Affordable Care Act in place. But you can still say that you repealed Obamacare. And they could go to their constituents and say, we did it, we got rid of it, even if at the end of the day it's not dramatically different than what the Affordable Care Act was.
So something like creating competition by allowing you to buy over state lines, something small like that.
Something relatively small that doesn't overhaul the entire system. Now the problem is, if you talk with a lot of healthcare experts, they will tell you that there aren't a lot of levers like that where you could just pull one lever and it affects one thing in the healthcare system. It's so complex and everything is related that if you pull one lever, it causes a chain reaction that changes a lot of things in the healthcare system, like changing the ratios for old versus young coverage. That could change a whole lot of things that you didn't intend for it to change.
And because we're talking about all these things and we don't know exactly what it is, but we know something is going to change, that has been your story for the last couple of weeks, that the fact that it's unknown creates anxiety.
Which is why you should continue to read your newspaper and watch shows like this, because it is a developing story and you'll want to know the latest, because it really could affect how your healthcare works.
Especially the News Journal and Delaware Online. Matt Albright writes for the News Journal. He's the political reporter. You can also see his stuff on Delaware Online. Thank you.
Thank you so much for
As
having
always,
me.
please come back when we know more about it. That is the Delaware Way for this week. Go to www.kjwp2.com to replay segments from this show or previous shows, and leave your comments about what you've seen on today's show on our Facebook page, or you can reach me on Twitter at the Delaware Way or at Larry Menti. We may read your thoughts on a future show. I'm Larry Menti. That's it for the Delaware Way this week. See you again next week.